Welcome, everyone. This is Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn. Happy New Year. Let's see, everybody can hear and see my screen okay? Please let me know in the chat. Perfect. All right, looks like everything is working. How is everyone doing here today? So as always, during my presentation, I prefer you answer in the chat. I'll be asking you questions throughout the lecture. It's going to be very interactive. And we're going to look at Magnus Carlsen endgame growth. So we're going to start when he is a kid. And here's a game in front of you, Magnus against David Howell. Both are 2,200 players. And this is round 11 of the World Championship under 12. Now, if Magnus wins this game, I think this is already last round. He's going to probably get a gold medal. If he draws this game, I think he doesn't get the gold medal. I think Nepo would get the gold medal. And obviously, if he loses, he's not going to get much. And this is a very instructive end game. Actually, it's not an end game yet. We're going to get to an end game shortly. But this is the one that Magnus actually misplays later on. To spoil the story, Magnus does not win this game. Him and David Howell become good friends. And Nepo becomes his arch nemesis. Nepo becomes the world champion. And you know how that ends. Magnus is going to be winning the title from Nepo many years later. Actually, Nepo never becomes the world champion, right? In the sort of classical sense, he only becomes the world kids champion. So we have a pretty interesting backstory. But the theme is actually not quite the world championship itself. It's about end games. How Magnus Carlsen made mistakes as a kid. Yes, he was not perfect, okay, even though he's one of the best in the world. And, 2250 under 12, it's nothing huge. Probably most of you guys are better than Magnus when you were 12, right? And so these days, people are definitely higher rated in that age group. But nevertheless, the mistakes he made are very instructive. And he has become an endgame, absolutely phenomenal world champion of endgames, you can say too. And we're gonna compare some of his games from the recent World Blitz Championship to this game. Okay, so somebody is 11, 2K at 12, 24-11 at 14. Not bad, Aryan. Okay, some of you are 10 and 12. Yeah, so your guys are definitely in this range that you would be able to challenge the 12-year-old Magnus. And if you're only 8, not bad either, right? You have lots and lots of years to improve. So you guys are definitely can't relate to this game. How many of you have played in the World Youth Championships before? Let me know in the chat again to see who has the experience. Oh, Chloe, okay, good job. You played this year. How was it? So it is a lot of fun, but it's also quite stressful, especially if you have kind of a must-win game in the last round. Okay, so we need to learn the lessons. Ideally, you should learn lessons not from your own games, but for example, here, Magnus will make a classic mistake later on. But let's start now that everyone is settled in. So here it is White's turn. Okay, and Magnus is playing David Howell, very promising player himself. H5. How would you play as White? Of course, you have to play H5. This is absolutely masterful move. I hope everybody understands the reason behind H5. Right? Do I need to explain to you guys why H5 is a very cool idea? How many of you would play H5 here in the game? Okay, a lot of people are saying me in the chat. So what is the concept here? Who can explain to me the point behind this move H5? This is very instructive, and that's going to be the echo of today's lecture, these type of moves. Why is H5 such a powerful move here? Anybody? All right, so most of the people are in the right direction. This is called fixing the pawn, right? We are fixing this pawn on the dark square. What does that mean? That means if the light squares come off, light square bishops come off the board, that pawn could be a liability in the end game, right? We are creating a weak pawn, but it's not obvious how, because black plays simply g5. How on earth are we going to exploit this pawn on h6? Well, Magnus plays bishop g4, okay, tries to get pressure here on this diagonal. Maybe he's thinking about this f4 ideas, right? Also notice this king is definitely weak. Queen f6 is played in the game. Okay. And now what? And now Magnus actually does not play the best move. He plays queen e4, which honestly not the best move. It allows counterplay. Much simpler was maybe waiting move rook d3. I'm not sure if you want to commit to f4 this early. Generally speaking, when your opponent has no plan, you just want to anticipate this d5 push and just play the solid move rook d3. Black has no moves. Why is rook d3 the best move? Because black has absolutely no way to stop white's plan, which eventually may include the rook getting to the f file. So there's also bishop d4 ideas in the air. This is just not an easy move. Yeah, good question. What about d5, guys? What would we play if d5 is played? Because we have to look at d5 with every single move. How would we react to this move d5? C takes d, yeah. Looks reasonable to me. And if bishop takes, queen takes, maybe rook takes d6. How would you play this position? Now I am thinking about maybe f4. Now that the rook is protected on d3, right? Because on d1 it was unprotected. It's protected. Now I'm thinking about f4. Nice way to exploit these weaknesses. Again, the king and the pawn. So these are the kind of ideas a modern day Magnus would easily play, right? But back in the day, Magnus did not play this kind of chess quite yet. He played queen e4, maybe a little primitive. He definitely underestimated the counterplay. He definitely saw d5, probably did not evaluate this quite, that black is getting counterplay. cd, bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes d6. What is the big difference, guys? The prophylactic thinking, had the rook been on d3, you would play f4. Now you got to deal with this pressure on the d1 rook. And so rook takes d6, queen takes. Now f4 is not as good. So Magnus plays queen c4. And here comes David Howell's mistake. He plays queen d5 check. Poor endgame eval skills. It is tempting to trade, right? Because he's basically thinking about making the draw. But the problem is his pawn structure is ruined. So queen d5 is actually not the best move. Much better was to play queen a3. White is still the one present here, but the queen gives black that counterplay that he is looking for. It's not easy to win for white. So this is the better try. But let's get to the meaty end game. Now this is the kind of the theme of today. How would you play as white? Very simple question. And unfortunately, Magnus did not play this endgame correctly. So he is not quite the Magnus that we know these days. So let's give people some time. So it's not trivial based on the chat responses so far. So people are still thinking. Funny enough, people are making the same mistake as the young Magnus here. I don't think anyone has mentioned the right move here yet. Okay, somebody's already thinking in the right direction here. Let's give people some more time. Okay, so far, people are generally thinking about several directions. F4, G4, trying to get the bishop, some A4 move, some king redirection. So lots of different ideas. Lots of different ideas. Let's see who is going to be correct here. I'm going to give a little bit more time for people to think about this position. And the move that Magnus played, guys, is F4. So whoever voted for the move F4, you are wrong. Well, that's okay. You still made the same mistake as the world champion at 12, although he did not become the world under 12 champion. So this is a very instructive mistake, and the move that is asking to be played, right, to try to break open the position a little bit, to get this G5 pawn out of there. So the correct move is King F3. Perhaps the combination with G4, if you started with G4 and move 1, you can also probably get credit. But the main idea of King F3 is to meet F5, which Black wants to play, with this move G4. So whoever thought about this idea G4 now or before King F3 gets full credit. Why? This is a basic old principle, right? We want to fix the structure. The bishops are of the same color. You want to put the pawns on the opposite color, fixing the weaknesses. Very basic technique that turned out to be one of the reasons why Magnus easily won the World Blitz Championship in past year. Okay, we're going to go over after this game. I'm going to show you how this technique gave him a couple of easy victories. And the major problem is Black's H6 pawn, of course. And let me show you what would happen here. If Black plays F4 to try to lock up the game, White plays bishop here. And let's say Black just waits, King F7. So Black's idea is I'm just going to go back and forth, or maybe move the bishop back and forth. I'm going to keep F8 square under control. What is your winning plan, guys, if you're White? How would you make progress? Wesley says relocate the king. Well, okay, how would you do that? A couple of people are getting it right. All right, already 3 people got the right idea. All right, 4 people, 5 people. This is good, guys. You're getting this right. So whoever said play E3 or E4, it actually doesn't matter, is getting full credit for this one. So E3 pretty much forces Black's hand. E4 does as well. That's how you activate the king. But things are not so simple because they're going to take, and you have to take with a pawn, not with the king. This is wrong. This is not the right one. You got to take with a pawn. And again, if Black is waiting, you play E4. So this is the winning idea, to activate the king by pushing the pawn. So now Black is busted. If Black plays D takes E, of course, the king just enters the game. Here, there's more than one way to win. Simplest is just to activate the king. If Black tries to get the game locked up, it's actually even more trivial win. We just walk the king around. So King E2, let's say they wait, King D3. We're going to take the D pawn. Obviously, they cannot trade the bishops, but then our king gets active. And together with the E pawn, we're going to win the game easily. Don't forget, we can always pick up this guy later on. So it is kind of easy once you think about this, but not obvious at first. So this is the point. What is the difference if you start with f4, you may wonder? Well, the problem is after takes, bishop b2, Magnus does activate the king. How should black play here, guys? David did find the correct move. Okay, Gordon, good job. Okay, let's give some other people a chance. There is one very much accurate move that stops white from winning the game. Kyle, good job. Okay, Annie, excellent. Anish, good job. A lot of people are getting that. Sam, good job. So it's black's turn, guys. Black's turn. Yep. Okay, most people are getting this one. So the simple idea is to set up a fortress. Whoever said f5 in the chat is absolutely correct. There is no way for white to win the game. Magnus is going to try for the next 10 moves or so, but it is a fortress. And this actually is pretty funny to me because in 2016, Magnus played against Karyakin in the World Championship. And there were a couple of games where, you know, he said he didn't believe in fortresses, right? Where Karyakin could have, you know, defended pretty easily in the fortress. So Magnus sometimes misses fortresses altogether. Maybe he underestimated this f5 move. So he tried. I'm going to show you quickly that he's activating his king. He tries to, of course, trade the bishops. Thanks, but no thanks, says the bishop. And the problem is you can't activate your king. You want to get the king in this direction or in this direction, but it's impossible. So he tried to walk the bishop back. Again, notice that king here is always going to run into this check. So more maneuvering happened. Not much is really happening. And eventually they agree to a draw. So more maneuvering. Of course, Magnus needs to win, right, to get clear first. And not much is happening. Not much is happening. And eventually they agree to a draw in 53 moves. So what are the lessons from this game? Magnus played great in the opening and late middle game. And while he did allow this d5 counterplay, even there, David made a pretty serious mistake by trading queens. Did Magnus get second? Actually, a good question. I think he might have, yes, because David got bronze. So Magnus got second and Nepomniachtchi got gold. I think that's how they finished. All right, so now we're gonna fast forward, guys. Okay, we're gonna fast forward 20 years later. All right, to the World Blitz Championship that just recently happened, where Magnus got first place. All right, this game he's playing against a low-rated player from Uzbekistan. Magnus is rated 2830, and this is round 18. Yeah, big time travel here. Magnus is not impressive. He is probably tired from lots and lots of grueling blitz battles. He's wasting too much time on opening moves in this game. He even forgets a rare line that he plays here as white. Gets no advantage, but I'm not going to spoil the story here. I'm going to show you what happened as the game unfolds. So his opponent is playing excellent chess, by the way, in the initial stages. We're going to get ourselves a Grunfeld. I'm always tired when I play chess games. Well, you're not the only one. You got to build up your stamina. Yeah, do some physical exercise, some sports, maybe swimming, tennis, anything to get you moving. Bishop g7, bishop g2. So this is a Najdorf or soccer. Yeah, soccer works. d5. All right, so he's not going for the so-called c6, d5 solid Grunfeld. He's going for the sharp Grunfeld. Takes. White does have this option of e4, knight e2, but Magnus goes for the classic knight f3, castles, knight b6, knight c3. Again, Magnus goes into a pretty deep thing here. I mean, he should be on autopilot, right, guys? This is 3+2 blitz, and he plays this rare move, bishop f4. Has anyone ever seen this move, bishop f4? And if you did, who is the founder of this idea? Who played this first? Anybody? I would guess nobody has a clue. That's my initial guess, because it's a pretty old idea that's not quite popular these days. Guys, this is before engines. Engines were not even at 20, I don't know, 24, 2300 at that time, even 2200 barely. I've seen it before, but I forgot. I have seen it. I invented it. Okay, good job. So this idea was actually invented by my coach, Roman Djindjikhashvili, or Djindji. And the idea here is after knight takes d4, so you are second pawn, knight takes d4, e5, is to play a move that Magnus did not play, which is shocking to me because Magnus has incredible memory. Yeah, good job, Anish. Magnus has incredible memory, yet somehow he forgot about the move here. He plays a terrible move, not the right move here. Who can tell me the right move besides Anish in the chat? Nope, it's not knight db5. It is definitely knight c6, guys. Good job. That was the point. Yes, good job, Megan. Everybody got that. So the point is if queen takes, intermezzo check, takes, and here white is going for tiny endgame squeeze with knight takes, rook takes, bishop b7. But black is okay, guys. Rook b8 with counterplay on the b file with the bishop. So this is not much. Most games in the database finish in a draw, but of course it's Magnus, right? He's trying to squeeze. Maybe this is what he should have gone for. So let's go back. Instead, he plays a really bad move. He plays bishop takes e5. Bishop takes e3. So black has the two bishops. What's your eval? How would you value this position after c6? Who is better and why? So why don't you guys take a moment here and brush up on your eval techniques? Given that I recently published the book, Evaluate Like a Grandmaster, I hope everyone now has read it. What is your way to evaluate this position? Okay, some people say minus 0.38. Some people say black is slightly better. Interesting that you use both the verbal and the computer evals. But explain to me your process, how you come to that conclusion. Oh, okay, 0.05. Interesting eval. White is slightly better. Okay, so we have actually drastic differences. Who is better? Interesting. All right, guys. Interesting how your evals work. Well, I'm getting the final answer, but I want to hear the thought process, how you get to this answer. Anybody can explain how? The correct answer is definitely, if anybody is better, it's black, right? Now the question is by how much? That's a much tougher one. Whether black is slightly better or black is just better. But there's a very basic technique that I can teach you how to evaluate positions. Is you start with the king safety. Which king is safer, white king or black king? I'd say pretty much the same. I don't see any danger for any kings. So then instead of either side, getting the plus or minus in that king safety category, we put an equal sign, right? Meaning it's the same. So king safety is the same. Material, obviously the same. Who controls more space and the center? White has a central pawn, but it's not a major. White has a centralized knight, but again, it's not a very stable piece. It can easily be attacked. So I'd say roughly the same. So the center is roughly the same controlled. Okay, who has better development? One could argue that this bishop is already quite well developed by controlling this diagonal. I don't think necessarily that white is better developed. So you see, I'm going through every positional element, assuming that there are no crazy tactics here, and there are none, right? So far, equal, every category. Okay, then we talk about pawn structure. Anybody has a better structure here? Not really. Pawn structure is about even. Nobody has bad pawns. Okay. What about end game? Who is better in the end game? Probably, if you take the queens off the board, I would argue that black is only a tiny bit better, but maybe not much. But there is one specific element that I haven't mentioned yet. Bishop pair. Bishop pair in itself could be an important element. Bishop pair. Black has the bishops and white doesn't. That factor alone gives black a plus and minus to white in this category. Therefore, black is better. As simple as that. There are no other factors in the position that outweigh the bishop pair. So pretty simple technique, right? You go through every single positional element and evaluate that. Now, by how much, it doesn't matter. Whether you say minus 0.3, minus 0.5, every engine is going to say differently, right? You forgot the possibility to improve their position. Yes, this is a little bit more of advanced concept. Yeah, Joshua actually mentioned that. Who has more improving moves? I mean, both sides, I think, have similarly improving moves because, white can naturally connect the rooks by moving the queen. Black can do the same. So I wouldn't necessarily, specify that specific area, but you're right. There are a lot of positions where one side has way more improving moves than the other one. All right, so let's keep going. So black is better. Magnus plays queen c2. Obviously, we're not going to take and allow rook d1. So black just simply plays queen e7, rook a d1, bishop g4. Now we come to an important decision. h3 is going to be up in the air. So black plays rook d8, h3, and the question is, would you take the knight to ruin the structure, or would you go back and allow white the doubled rooks in the d file? So this is the dilemma. Bishop c8 or bishop takes d4, guys. How would you make that call? Bishop takes d4. So you lose the bishop pair, but you give white an IQP, which could be a long-term weakness, right? Isolated queen pawn. Or you preserve the bishops and you drop back to c8. We have some people disagreeing in the chat. Some people say bishop takes, some people say bishop c8. Interesting decision. It's not obvious. Keep in mind, this is a blitz game. Black does not have a whole lot of time to dwell on this. Now, believe it or not, neither move is a mistake. It's a personal preference. If you really check this position with engines, it's not going to give you a mistake. But I do have a strong preference for bishop to c8. Why is that? Think about this, guys. Black has what we call static advantage, long-term advantage. These bishops are not going anywhere, right? Somebody mentioned in the chat this idea, maybe h5, h4. Like, black has ideas. Yes, white could double the rooks, but it's not the end of the world. The d file is firmly under control from the rook on d8. The rook on d8 is protected. Knight on d4 can't do much. So this is an interesting decision. While the engine gives almost the same eval to bishop takes d4 and to bishop c8, this one I don't like, because what happens here is this king is slightly weak. Okay, so I don't like this as much. So in the game, this is what happened. Queen c1, rook d8, rook d1. And now black is fine with rook d7, black is fine with h5. But black plays this logical queen b4 move. And little by little, he gets into worse position. Okay, so whoever said bishop takes d4, you should be aware that you are weakening your king long term, right? And whoever said bishop c8, I think, practically speaking, was probably making the right call. But the queen b4 is the real mistake. Black is still completely fine whether you play h5 or rook d7, because white can't really do much here. And of course, Magnus now does his magic. First, he plays a3, queen b3. I don't like that move. He should have, realized the king's in danger, keep the queen nice and close to the king. And then little by little, Magnus gets his type of position. He kicks the bishop, activates the knight. Black gets the d5 square, but so what? Rook e1. Magnus immediately seizes the e file. Queen b6 and knight c5. All of a sudden, plus over equal. That's my eval here. Why is that? My only reason is the king. Magnus always comes out on top. But actually, in this game, in the next couple of moves, Magnus was a little shaky, guys. And I'll show you why. He did not play the best moves. So queen c7, what would you play here as white? Magnus made a pretty serious mistake. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily mistake per se, but he missed a very powerful opportunity to get a big advantage. Let's put it that way. So again, white to play, not an easy move at all for a blitz game. I have to tell you that. Therefore, Magnus missed this opportunity. But this is what Magnus is really good at in these types of positions. Normally, he would play this move on autopilot. He was a little bit off in this game. Okay, let's see what people say in the chat. People are actually saying queen g5 in the chat, which is what he played in the game. That's not a bad move, but that's not the best. So this is a very logical blitz move, but it's not the best. There's a way, way better move, guys. And it's not queen h6. All right, so it's not queen h6. It's not g5. G5, I don't like that. Ooh, that's a little bit early to play like that. This king is weak, and after g5, it's going to be hard for you to get to that king. Anish is correct. Okay, good job, Anish. Not an easy move. Good job that you spotted it. It's not b4. It's not rook e5. It's not h4. And it's not knight d3. Not easy. I told you guys it's not easy. How about this? I'll give you a hint. Look for a move that you would never normally consider. Good job, Angela. All right, Joshua's got it too. Yeah, I think people are getting this one. More and more people are getting it. It's a very unusual move. Normally, you would never play this move. At least you wouldn't consider that move. But see, chess is a funny game. You look at moves like this, and they look kind of ugly at first. Bishop takes d5. What? That's the best piece. It's defending your king. It's a beautiful bishop, and you part with that bishop for that knight. But chess is a concrete game sometimes, and this is the problem is Black's king is the one that is also weak. And then immediately rook e8 doesn't really win the game because the king can go to g7. But queen h6 sets up a very annoying idea, rook e8 mate. And after rook d8, knight e4, Black is busted. It's practically difficult to defend against these two threats. So just like that, Magnus could have gotten a big advantage, almost decisive advantage. Now we're going to look at pawn takes d5 as well. Pawn takes d5 instead of rook takes d5. And now queen g5 is even more powerful. The thing about this is this bishop is totally out of the game, right? When we are attacking this king, we're going to play on the dark squares. This bishop is not going to participate. We have some nice ideas. Rook e7, of course. Queen is putting pressure there. Black is in serious trouble. Okay, let's go back here. So, okay, this is a blitz game, so we're not going to dwell too much on this bishop takes d5 missed opportunity. Let's keep going. King g7. How would you continue here as white? I believe Magnus used half of his time. He had about 1 minute and 40 seconds left or so. He used half of his time and again failed to play the right move here. Guys, focus. All right, some of you are already getting the right answer in the chat. Good job. But this actually requires a little bit of calculation. So this is not as easy, perhaps. It's actually, I think Magnus did consider this move and calculate it for a long time, but he didn't quite maybe trust himself enough to go into this line. So this is a relatively forced in sequence. Guys, focus on the position at hand. White to play. And I'm kind of going to give you a little bit of a hint. Calculate the force sequence, which is bishop takes d5. Rook takes d5, rook e7, and there's queen d8 at the end. Okay, queen d8 is the key move for black. I'm sure Magnus saw queen d8, but the game keeps going. What should white do there? Knight e6 doesn't work there, right? Bishop takes. Okay, so queen e3, that sequence. Rook takes d4. Okay, so let me help you a little bit here by bishop takes d5. He missed this, by the way. This is a very important sequence he had to calculate. And he did spend half of his time, I'm pretty sure, calculating this line. King f8 is the better try here. Okay, guys? King f8 is a better try. Get out of the pin. Rook e5. Rook takes d4. And now check. Here and knight e4. White is better. Very, very difficult to calculate this perfectly. Of course, this king is quite weak. So we have very nice ideas here, not easy to defend. And of course, on top of that, there is knight g5 at some point. So Magnus invested half of his time. This is a very difficult sequence. Bishop takes d5. He didn't really calculate this to the end. He plays knight d3. Not a good move because it doesn't really do anything. Black plays here. He repeats. Black goes back. He goes there. Bishop goes there. Will you make a draw? Magnus here has 30 seconds against maybe 2 minutes. Will you make a draw with 30 seconds against 2 minutes or so? Not if you're Magnus. I like that answer. Okay. Of course, Magnus, this is almost like a must-win game. He wants to win this World Blitz Championship. So he says, okay, since I couldn't quite calculate that line, I'm just going to regroup and play queen d2. White has no advantage whatsoever. Okay, guys, no advantage. But it's a blitz game, right? Anything can happen. Black plays b6, giving us a little bit of something, right? Magnus will sense this target. So rook c1, queen d6, knight e5, knight e7. Black is rock solid, right? Black is happy to trade this pawn for this pawn. Magnus goes for the end game. And now the theme is going to be, once again, end game. Right? All of this was kind of a preview. Now we get to the real business here. Rook c7, check here. And then big dilemma for Magnus's young opponent. Rook d7 to eliminate the attacking piece, or rook d2 counterplay on the second rank. Which one would you choose? All right, guys, this is a choice. How would you justify this choice? You're playing against the world champion, by the way. Magnus is sitting in front of you, who has less time. All right, some people are saying rook d7, some people are saying rook d2. Interesting split, almost 50-50 split here. Interesting. Some people are kind of feeling that there's going to be some squeezes happening. So there's a famous saying, best defense is offense. And this is a good time to apply this technique, guys. Even though if you turn the engine on, okay, it will tell you no difference. Rook d2, the move that I like the most, is no different than rook d7. The eval is probably going to be still a draw with best play. But it is a practical game of chess, meaning that in a practical game, you have to solve real issues. Rook d7 is going to be passive defense from now on, and the passive defense, you can't go wrong. Active defense is the simplest way to play this. And after b4, you're going to play a5. You're going to trade the pair of pawns. You're going to give up the a pawn. But the key is you're going to maintain the active rook. And this is easy draw. He has ideas to check. And now pretty much any move is a draw. You can play rook c3, just kind of waiting. If a4, you can put the rook behind the pawn. Trust me, that a pawn is not going to queen. The rook is going to do a good job stopping it. The rook also cuts the king off completely. And the second option is you can activate your own king with king f6. If bishop f3, you can check and keep pinning the bishop. Like, just white can't make progress. Or another active move, f5, just keep trading as many pawns as possible. All right, so this is very simple mechanism, which is called active defense. Remember that. And endgame's active defense sometimes is easier. But okay, black chose the passive defense. So let me go back here. Sorry, he didn't play rook d2. He played rook d7. Takes. What's your autopilot move as white? Magnus has 10 seconds. Quick. 1, 2, 3, go. Autopilot move. Quick. Wow, a lot of you don't have good instincts. Some are getting this right. Guys, remember the very first example of today's game, Magnus against Howell? What do you sense immediately? You sense bishops of the same color. Black wants to play g5. Stop it. g5. Bam. Magnus plays this in his sleep with his eyes closed. Whether he is tired or not, this is absolutely the essential move. The moment you play this autopilot king g3, bam, no more winning chances. This is fundamental knowledge, bullet, blitz, whatever you want to call it. You have to play g5 and fix at least one of these pawns, right, on a light square. And of course, you want to activate the king. Very essential knowledge, right? By now, everyone should know this. Basics. This is foundation of basic endgames, right? Capablanca's rule, right? Some people say, put the pawns on the opposite color of the bishop. But black is not losing, okay? Black is still rock solid. Correctly trading a pair of pawns, h6, h4, takes, and now he activates the king. So black is playing pretty good defense so far. If Magnus can play this in his sleep, he can crush me in his sleep. King e7, king f4, king d6. No way white is not getting the king to e5. How on earth is Magnus going to make progress, guys? Well, Magnus tries to go around with king e3. Okay, king c5. Now the point, if b4, this king is going to sneak in to get to that a pawn. So king d3, a5 to stop b4, logical, and then king c3. Once again, Magnus asks a practical question of his young opponent. You got to choose, my friend, to play a4 to stop b4 idea and activating the king, or abandoning this plan and going back to d6. How would you make this decision, guys? Again, by this time, black has no time, right? Black has probably half a minute or so left. Quick, autopilot move as black. a4, king d6, a4, king d6. Let me know in the chat. Yeah, it's black's turn, guys. a4, king d6. All right, so a lot of you said a4 autopilot move. Wrong. It's not a losing move, but black just put the pawn on another light square. What are you guys doing? We just talked about this. Right? It's not a losing move. I have to tell you in advance, you're not lost, but you are getting very close. You are getting very close of losing the game. All right. Yes, king d6, even though you are given ground, right? You actually maybe start bishop d6 if you want. So here I gave bishop e6, but king d6 is completely fine. And king d4 here. There is no way white can win this endgame. It's a fortress. Remember the Howell game? There's no way you can lose this. Bishop's going to go back and forth. Right, guys? So keep that in mind. It's not that easy for white to make progress. Yes, the pawn is on f7. It's a target. But as long as the bishop doesn't get to the a2 d5 squares, then you're okay. All right, so this is the thought process. So bishop e6 is also a draw, of course. Just king d6. I don't see a way to lose this position for black. All right, so let's roll back and see how black found a way to lose this game. a4. Okay, Magnus starts his dance with the bishop. He's dancing with the bishop. Oh, sneaks in there. Oops, forces b5. Oops. Now black has to be very vigilant. He plays bishop b3. Not a great move. He should have tried to keep this king at least stuck on c3 for as long as he can. But okay, bishop b3 doesn't lose the game quite yet. King d3. And now, guys, bishop c4 check. Already, he is going in the wrong direction. He's going in the wrong direction. He should have played bishop c4. Okay, restrict the king. King d3, bishop d5. Only move to make a draw. Okay, it's not that difficult of a move if you think about it. White's only idea is to activate the king. Why not play bishop d5? He was scared of the move f4. Now it seems like black is in zugzwang. Now, if you are playing classical game, right, you can actually calculate this out to a draw. With funny part is the pawn on f4 is a draw. The pawn on f2, black is losing. It's impossible to know that unless you do the calculation. Now, this is a blitz game. Are we going to really tell that black made, computer is going to say, oh, this is a blunder, and this is a draw? Because there's a long sequence of moves after the pawn gets to f4 that black makes a draw. It's impossible in a practical game. Therefore, the real mistakes are moves like a4, right? Real mistakes are moves like rook d7. It's where you are going on that very narrow path to make a draw with only moves, and you have no time to figure that out. So computers and chess make this game. If you just analyze this with engines, you will not understand anything. You will not draw the right conclusions. It's only humans that can understand and explain to you what went wrong. Okay, so keep that in mind. So now, after bishop c4, I'm going to explain to you why with the pawn on f2, it's a win, and with the pawn on f4, it's a draw. It's not obvious. Now look what happens in the game. King e4, king d6, king d4. Okay, now again, Zugzwang on the board. You got to do something. So he played king e7. Okay, bishop c6, king d6, bishop e4. And now again, we're going to get ourselves a Zugzwang. Black says, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm just going to go toward this pawn. Of course, he allows the king to sneak in. King c5. It's a win, guys. It's a pretty easy win. Magnus is on autopilot. He's going to win all the pawns. Bishop b3 forces the bishop trade. And now f2 pawn is important here. And of course, it's an easy win. a4, a5, king c4, and just f4. Black resigned. All right, so this is easy win. Let me explain to you the difference now with the pawn on f2 versus f4. Okay, so let me go all the way back here. So instead of bishop c4, what happened in the game? Black should play bishop d5. f4, black's in Zugzwang. But now this plan works. King d6, king e6, king c5, king f5, takes, 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 takes. You got to really calculate this out. But it is obvious that we queen at the same time. b4, f5, bam, 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 bam. And this is a draw. All right. So yes, computers will say 0, 0, 0, right? When they calculate the sequence. In the human world, when you're playing, choosing between this move and this move, and you see that there's f4 or f2, it's impossible to make that split-second decision. So it's easy for the engine, right? But that's what I mean, that the mistakes that Black made, they're practical mistakes, while objectively, the rook d7 move was still fine. The move a4 was still fine, but practically, you're putting yourself in that very narrow path that you have to find only moves, and it's impossible. Yeah, so bishop d5 is the best try, correct. Now, also, I want to point out that there is another Zugzwang as happened if he does not pursue this king e6 plan. So let's say he just kind of waits with like bishop e6. How would you win here as white? You want to get a Zugzwang as well. So you can kind of waste a little bit of moves here, right? I'm going to go bishop d3, another Zugzwang. And then you win with bishop e4. Turns out that king and pawn endgame is winning. If bishop takes, takes, king here, you go king d4, king d6, king here, here, b3. You always have, guys, this extra tempo, f3, f4, should be able to win. Not obvious, but it is a win, trust me. And the funny part is, in this position, if bishop goes back, you are completely lost after bishop d5. And here we go, classic Zugzwang. All of that g5 idea, fixing that pawn, is really obvious now. So do you think Magnus calculated any of this when he played g5? No, he had 10 seconds. Of course not. He can play it in his sleep, right? Like I said. But he did learn the lessons from the game against David Howell, right? When he was 12. And now he's an endgame monster because he's on autopilot mode. All of the little things that we discussed, he has mastered, such as fixing the pawns on the light squares when the bishops are of the light square. So this is one of the fundamental things about fixing the pawns that Magnus has learned really well. And he has used this technique. If you go through all his games, right, you can download all the games from the Blitz Championship and even Rapid, and just look through how well he played all of these end games. Yes, he did make mistakes, obvious, right? It's Blitz, but nevertheless, he is like end game god when it comes to these kind of positions. So in summary, what did we learn here today? We looked at a game of Magnus that against David Howell, where he played really well, but then he made this one mistake, allowed the fortress, and drew the game, did not become the world under 12 champion, learned his lessons, right? Came back, and now he's on top of the world. He's got the triple crown. the classical, the rapid, and the blitz. And are his openings very impressive? Well, this game to me showed no. He didn't know about this knight c6 move. He was even worse out of the opening with white and less time. Is his middle game very impressive? It's reasonable, but I wouldn't necessarily say based on this game, if anything like specifically amazing. Yeah, sometimes he's playing excellent middle game moves, sometimes just good enough. But what about his end game skills? Godlike, guys. This is next level end game. Okay? If you can improve one area of your chess and to get it to as close as you can to this level of end game, you can become world blitz champion just with end games, right? I mean, yes, he's an absolute monster, relatively speaking, of course, too. But among other top players, even this game showed, I don't see any superiority in the opening and like normal kind of middle game skills. But end games is definitely next level stuff. Yes, he is not playing this year World Championship. That's right. Nepo is gonna play against Ding. So who is gonna win it? I don't know. Maybe Nepo has a better chance because he has more experience and he's got a pretty good team that's been with him for a year now. But definitely Ding is not to be underestimated, right? He's rock solid chess player, excellent chess understanding, excellent calculation skills. The only negative is he doesn't have quite a team that you need at that level. So, okay, maybe Ding will win. I don't know, but it's still going to be too close to call, I think. But it is unfortunate that Magnus stepped out because you definitely want to see him compete not only at the top tournaments, but at the World Championship too. All right, so I hope you guys learned your own lessons. While you're still in that age, between 8 and 14 and 15, you can definitely improve this area of chess if you go through these important elements that we discussed today, such as fixing the opponent's pawns, this kind of endgame decision-making process, and specifically focus on creating practical problems for your opponent. That's what Magnus did. All right, thank you guys. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.